Welcome to Legacy and Leadership. I'm David McKean. Join me as we talk to leaders in their field regarding their thoughts on leaving a legacy and impact in their families and in their community. Welcome to Legacy and Leadership. I'm David McKean, and I am honored to have as my guest today Sheriff Paul Burch, who is a native Mobilian and a U.S. Navy Seabee veteran who has served in law enforcement for more than 36 years. He is also a graduate of BC Rain High School. He earned degrees in criminal justice and Homeland Security, and he completed the FBI National Academy as well. Want to learn more about that, Sheriff Burch. He began his law enforcement career in 1989 and is the only sheriff in Mobile County history to have held every rank in the sheriff's office before being elected in 2022. He serves on the Child Advocacy Board, the Penelope House Board, and the Alabama Sheriff's Association Legislative Committee. So welcome, Sheriff Burch. We're so glad to have you.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me.
Absolutely. So I'd like to spend a few minutes just to get to know you and have our audience kind of understand more about your background. So what was it like growing up in Mobile for you?
Well, I mean, had a wonderful childhood. Back when, there was no such thing as cell phones or computers, but, both my parents worked, but, there was always a network of moms who, we had to check in during certain times. Just growing up, with friends and running and playing, being things that boys do. Yeah. And so very fond memories of that, and wish the world were more like that today.
Sure, absolutely. Did you play any sports growing up, or?
I did. I played football for a short time, but park ball, and then when I got into high school, I played drums and band, marching band and concert band, but I also started working at 14 years old.
Really?
And
wow.
So I've always been driven to work. Okay. And back then you could get your parents had to sign to get a permit to work. Of course, they'd take me, or I'd walk, to and from. And as I got to driving at 16, aside from school and band, I worked 2 jobs. So,
my goodness.
But I reinvested all that money back into my truck, and so I wish I had that money back then.
I can relate to that.
I built it and had it built in such a way that I used to race for gas money back then. And so, but it had an engine. When the speed arm went one way, the fuel gauge went the other. So, but it was a lot of
fun. That's great. That's great. You said you were very driven at a young age. Was that out of necessity, or was it because some parental influence?
Parental and grandparents. My grandfather on my mom's dad. He was older. He was born New Year's Eve 1900.
Wow.
And so he was already retired as we were growing up. But we used to always say if someone got in trouble, instead of sending them to prison, send them to work for him, and they'll never commit a crime again.
Really?
That man would work you to death, but he taught us a great work ethic.
Yeah, I love that.
A lot of cousins lived, in the area, close by, so we'd spend weekends there. He lived on the bay. Okay. And so, we were always either working in the garden, helping repair or build a new greenhouse, and there was always something to do. But then, when we were done with those chores, and he was right there with us. He didn't just say, hey, go do this. He was right there with us. Then we got to go out in the bay and have fun and go soft shelling, floundering, those kind of things. And, even as his health began to decline, because he lived till he was 97.
My goodness.
He about his last year, he was pretty much blind. And he would go out, he had pecan trees everywhere. He would go fill with his feet and pick up pecans, and then go inside and shell them. Really? Yeah. So I mean, he just a great role model growing up, and of course my dad worked a lot too. So
yeah, that's great. Sounds like an incredible man.
Yep.
A quick aside, I got to ask: have you ever seen a Jubilee in person?
One time across the bay.
Okay.
Never saw one in Mobile Bay, but
Okay.
Went to one across the bay years ago. So
Yeah.
it's something to behold.
I bet. For those not from the lower Alabama area, a Jubilee is a phenomenon that last I heard, I think exists in 2 places in the world. And Mobile Bay is one of them, and it's where all the fish and the seafood come up on the shore, and you can literally just go by and scoop them up. Flounder and shrimp and all kinds of stuff, right?
Yep.
Crabs?
Yep.
That's great.
We used to, there used to be a restaurant called McGovern's at the end of Bayfront Road. And so my cousins and I there was a big, heavy-set older guy sat in the kitchen. We would get a little styrofoam cooler, pick up soft shells.
Really?
Until it was full, and he'd give us a nickel a piece for them. We thought we were very wealthy. we would buy gum and candy and from 7-Eleven almost until it wasn't anymore.
You use it to load up on sugar, right?
Yeah,
Oh, that's great. That's incredible. I tell you what, that's been a joy of mine personally is raising my children on the coast, and then I'm enjoying that coastal life because the stuff that you just mentioned is so unique.
Yep.
So that's fantastic.
We were very fortunate to have that environment here.
Yeah, absolutely, without a doubt. So, so high school, you were in the band and you worked 2 jobs. My goodness, how did you find time to do that?
After band practice, they had recently built the McDonald's across the street.
Okay.
And then later a Godfather's. So the days I wasn't working at McDonald's, I work at Godfather's. On the weekends, I would do both.
My goodness.
So. But, my parents were, I was fortunate. They gave me a truck. It was an old truck. They gave me a truck and then said, you're responsible for gas and insurance. And so.
Wow.
But, I was very fortunate and I took really good care of it.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. Well, good. So what led you to join the Navy?
Well, it's actually, interesting story because I knew from an early age that I wanted to be in law enforcement. Mm-hmm. So at the time, coming up on graduation, I went to apply for Mobile Police Department and found out they would not hire you till you're 23 years old.
Wow.
So I signed at 17 to the U.S. Navy Seabees for 5 years, so I'd be 23 when I got out.
Wow.
And the rest is history, as they say. I've been in law enforcement since.
Wow, that's incredible. So what was it like as a 17, 18-year-old joining the Navy? Was it scary? Was it?
It was because, and the reason it was is, growing up, we lived in Navco, grandparents were on DIP, so just kind of stayed in that area. I think maybe, went to the mall maybe twice. I mean, I rarely left that Dolphin Island Parkway area. Yeah. So it was a real culture shock having to go somewhere out of state.
Wow.
And, because I'd never really had been out of state.
Wow.
So it was eye-opening and never, been away from home and all that. And so it was unique. And we had boot camp, and then I was first stationed in Virginia. And then after that, again, but I got married shortly after graduating high school. And so, I still had that core family, and looking back, probably did it so young because I was away by myself.
Right.
And then after that, after Virginia, I got deployed to Puerto Rico, and then I was in a mobile battalion.
Okay.
So first time basically, they're still part of the U.S., but it was out of country for me. I'd never seen anything like that.
Sure.
And then after that, Japan, and then Spain.
My goodness.
That
wow.
was, and I loved Spain. Absolutely.
Did you really?
Loved it, yeah.
Okay.
Japan was nice, but Spain, just the culture there and the people.
Very
really
unique.
Yep.
Yeah. So you were a Seabee. Some people may not know what that is. Would you mind sharing a little bit about that?
It's a construction battalion.
Yep.
And I 5 years in the Navy, never set foot on a ship. They flew us everywhere. So,
really?
Yes. Yeah, so
that's fascinating.
A lot of your training is with the Marines, and they have the amphibious ships that you can pull equipment and personnel off of. But I was a steel worker, so I enjoyed doing it. And for a minute, considered, okay, this might be a good living. Then I got tired of just coming home and coughing up and blowing out black stuff every night.
Ooh,
so
I can't imagine.
I stuck to my career plan to be in law enforcement when I got out.
Absolutely. So from a leadership perspective, what was it like being in the Navy?
It was I rose through the ranks pretty quickly. And I was on the list to be promoted to E6 when I got out, which is
Wow. Yeah.
in 5 years that's pretty good.
Yeah.
I was an E5 steel worker when I got out, and so you move into those leadership roles. Again, I was still a kid, and I've got people a lot older than me that now I'm responsible for. A squad consists of about 50, 60 people.
Wow.
A battalion back then was about 650 people. And so you're broken up into several squads and platoons. So now I'm having to supervise people who are older than me.
Yeah.
And it was fun. It was challenging. Never really had any problems. I think I've always had a unique talent for identifying talent and specialty skills in other people.
Yeah.
And that transitioned into my law enforcement role as I started taking on leadership roles there. Just, I don't know what it is, just I can, watch people, observe them for a little while and figure out, what their special skills are. And my coworkers get tired of hearing me say it, but I'm a big believer in round pegs and round holes.
Okay.
And so you identify those, people's skills and then do everything you can to enhance those skills and let them build on it and let others learn from that as well.
Right.
So
yeah, I love that.
Every person, either that I worked with in the Navy or through law enforcement, everybody has their own little niche, and you just have to discover that and develop it, and then let them pass that on to others.
Yeah, it sounds like that comes very natural to you to be able to identify people's talents and their gifts. Very practically for our audience, how do you go about that process?
Well, and this will go into probably some future questions, but I think the most important and the way that I do that is keeping my mouth shut and listening and observing. and you have to be out there with your coworkers and I say coworkers, no one has ever heard me say subordinate or employee. We all work together. Our badges all look the same.
I love that. I love that.
So everyone's a coworker, and so it's being out there with them, observing them, because you're not going to identify any of that sitting behind a desk, and that's been the toughest challenge for me when I got elected, was having to be behind that desk more than I want to be.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's really, really good. That's a really good nugget for our audience of observing, but also I love how you said you want to get in, basically, as my father used to say, get in there amongst them.
Absolutely.
Right, and go elbow to elbow. Do you get pushback from that, or do you get people kind of raise their eyebrows at times? I
get pushback from my staff. They don't like me out in the field. There's and I hear the story circle around. It gets embellished a little bit sometimes, but we were in an operation in Pritchard not too long ago, and one of the deputies stopped a vehicle that had multiple occupants. He was dealing with them, and I saw, because I was kind of floating around the Pritchard area because I like being out in the field.
Right.
And then I saw him start to, saw the driver start to go back and forth with him, get mouthy, and so I eased on over there, and so the guy started to struggle, try to get back in the car. Well, that didn't go well for him, let's say. And he was trying to reach a handgun that was up under an armrest, and he got arrested.
Yeah.
And word quickly circulated, the sheriff's out here fighting people. So, 'cause I did. I mean, I took him to the ground hard and handcuffed him, and
yeah.
So that circulated real quickly. Like I said, as it went around through the department, it got embellished a little bit by others, but
sure.
It I think demonstrated that I will always be willing to get out there and go shoulder to shoulder with the guys.
Absolutely.
And like I said a minute ago, you can't do that sitting behind a desk.
Yeah. Do you? I love, as I mentioned earlier, the fact that you have coworkers, that you're elbow to elbow with those coworkers and not employees. At times, does that cause issues in terms of hierarchy or kind of people feeling too big for their britches or?
Not really. Another thing, I do is go to in-service every year, and that's broken into several classes because you can't put the whole department through at one time. And I share with them that when I'm out there in the field, I'm there just to be there and make sure they have what they need. And so not there to take over a scene, not there to give instructions, just I'm there watching and there if I'm needed. And so, and I started doing this in in-service when I took office. I go to each class and they're usually, a week long. So I go to each class and just have an open forum. And it's free to ask questions, criticize. I make that real clear, and it's been very productive and successful. A lot of them, and it's to see what their needs are. And a lot of times, most of the time, the issues that they were concerned about, I was not aware of, and I was able to resolve it by the time I got back to my office.
Really?
And and they see that they were heard. And so again, it's just the way I believe in running things.
Yeah.
If somebody's going to take the time to express a concern, or even a criticism, it's incumbent upon me to address that and provide that feedback.
Leading in that way and receiving that constructive feedback or criticism, have you had to develop a thicker skin through the years, or did that come natural for you?
It comes natural. I mean, to me, if you're not willing to accept criticism, you shouldn't be in a leadership role because nobody's perfect. And some of the criticism was warranted. Some of it is some things beyond my control, and like pay, and things like that, and new equipment. We do the best we can with the budget that we're given by the commission. But I can't wave a wand and make them give me more money.
Right.
So, but yeah, it's to be expected if you want to be in a position where you're leading people.
That's great. I want to go back to something you said earlier when you were talking about your Navy career and how you accelerated so quickly. What would you, if you had to pinpoint one or two things, what would you point to as your reason for that rise through the ranks and your success in the Navy?
I think it was just my drive and willingness to work. And I was one of these that, the way I was raised, you don't just, if you finish your task, that don't mean you just pack up and go. You stay until others are finished and help them get, and then that gets finished faster. And then you build that camaraderie and that reputation.
Yeah, teamwork.
And so, and I guess in a selfish way, if you looked at it as if you finish what your assignment was and you go back to the barracks, you're sitting there by yourself.
Right, right.
So it's best to jump in with a team and get everything done faster, and then get back to the barracks and everybody have a beer.
Right, exactly. Yeah, I also want to spend a few minutes on something else you said is that at times, because of your success, you had people that were older that were subordinates of yours. I have a 16-year-old who's a part of a varsity football team here locally, and he's asked Dad, essentially, how do I lead up, right? How do I lead people that are ahead of me in years and in grades on a football team? So how did you do that in the Navy?
Well, tapping into those resources. Again, there were people there who they'd been in the Navy already for 10 years, and some just had no desire to make rank. They were happy just doing the job, and they were good at their jobs, but I would tap into that knowledge and
experience.
Yes, I mean, because that's invaluable. And so, and even from then to today, I'm never afraid to ask, because none of us know everything.
Right.
And especially today, and I'll get back to the Navy, but the evolving technology every day, that's not a strong suit of mine. So I have to ask a lot when it comes to that stuff to be able to understand it.
Sure.
But as far as just being successful in the Navy, I attribute that to not thinking about, okay, I'm a higher rank than these people. I'm here to learn from them.
Right.
And then be able to provide what they need to do a better job. And I was never afraid to argue with the higher ups, ever. So,
fascinating.
yeah, but you do that with facts, and you can't just do it complaining.
Right, right. That makes a lot of sense.
And I worked for some good leaders in the Navy and police work, and I worked for some terrible leaders. And you learn from both.
You seem to express a lot of humility in your willingness to get constructive feedback, but also to ask those who have more experience. Where does that come from for you?
I would just a desire to learn and understand people. And that's what, I guess my whole desire of doing what I do is loving people and, doing what you can to make, not only, this county a better place, but you can have a positive impact on people's lives. And so that really is always driven me is just liking to be around people and sharing ideas and spending time with them.
Hey, if you like this episode, please stop right now and share it with a friend so they too can benefit from it. Please join us in a couple of weeks as we drop the second part of this episode. I promise you won't want to miss it.